Most people think creatine is just a gym powder for bigger biceps. But the real story in the latest journal studies isn't about muscle at all. It's about brain energy and what that might mean as we get older. And no, this is not about unlocking 100% of your brain like some sci-fi movie. Some of the most interesting creatine research right now isn't happening in weight rooms. It's happening in studies looking at memory, mental fatigue, sleep deprivation, mood, and cognitive aging. Today, I'm going to show you why creatine might be one of the most misunderstood supplements in modern health science, not because it builds muscle, but because of what it may be doing in your brain. And by the end of this video, you'll have a practical framework to decide whether creatine actually makes sense for you and a clear evidence-based boundary between health aging support and longevity hype. Hi, I'm Marcus, research scientist, the wellness watchdog, and this is Health Sense or Nonsense. I spend hours digging through peer-reviewed journals so you don't have to. No hype, no marketing fluff, all evidence-based. Let's start simple. Creatine is not a steroid. Creatine is a naturally occurring compound your body already makes from amino acids. You store it primarily in muscle, but also in the brain. Think of creatine as part of your internal backup battery system. When energy demands spike, creatine helps recharge ATP faster. ATP is your cell's energy currency. You burn through ATP quickly whenever physical or mental demand increases. Creatine helps recycle it. That's why athletes have used it for decades. But here's what rarely gets mentioned. Your brain uses the exact same energy buffering system, and your brain is expensive. It's about 2% of your body weight, but can use 20% of your resting energy. So if creatine supports energy buffering in muscle, it's reasonable to ask whether it does something similar in neurons. That's where the research gets really interesting. Your brain doesn't store much energy. It runs almost entirely in real time. Neurons are constantly firing electrical signals, pumping ions across membranes, recycling neurotransmitters, and maintaining gradients. All of that requires ATP continuously. Unlike muscle, which can tolerate sharp bursts of depletion, the brain is far less forgiving. Even small disruptions in energy balance can affect focus, reaction time, mental clarity, and here's something important. As we age, the tiny energy factories inside our cells called mitochondria can become a little less efficient. They're basically the power plants of your cells. And when power plants slow down, everything runs a bit less smoothly. Creatine increases something called phosphocreatine inside cells. In plain English, that's a stored form of quick battery energy. Think of it like having a small rechargeable battery sitting next to your main battery. When demand spikes, that backup battery kicks in fast. Brain imaging studies confirm supplementation can increase brain creatine levels. So we know it reaches the tissue that matters. The real question becomes performance. Does that extra buffering translate into measurable cognitive changes? When scientists combine multiple controlled human trials and analyze them together, what we call a systematic review and meta-analysis, the results become clearer. In 2024, researchers pulled randomized trials looking at creatine and cognition. They did not find a dramatic boost in overall intelligence. So this is not a limitless pill, but they did find small yet statistically significant improvements in memory, attention, and processing speed. Modest improvements, but real. Here's where context matters. The effects tend to show up most clearly under high demand, sleep deprivation, cognitive stress, lower baseline creatine intake, sometimes aging populations. The clean summary is this. Creatine appears to help specific cognitive tasks when the system is under load. Not always, not universally, but consistently enough to take seriously. There's another angle here that doesn't get enough attention. Creatine production in the body uses part of the same system involved in how your cells regulate genes and manage energy over time. Those regulation systems change as we age, Now, I want to be very careful here. We do not have human trials showing creatine reverses biological aging, but creatine interacts with systems involved in cellular energy balance and regulation. And those systems are part of the aging conversation. So while we can't say creatine extends lifespan, we can say it touches biological pathways that influence how cells function over time. That is a more accurate way to frame it. Before we move on, here's something important. If you've been told creatine is just a gym bro supplement, that framing is outdated. The research conversation has quietly evolved. And this is why it matters. As we age, energy efficiency becomes one of the central themes in biology. Cells don't necessarily stop working. They become less efficient at producing and buffering energy. That inefficiency shows up as slower recovery, slower thinking, lower resilience under stress, and reduced physical activity. Creatine directly intersects with that conversation, not as a cure, but as a support. That's why researchers studying cognitive aging and even neurodegenerative risk are at least asking the questions. Energy buffering is foundational. Now, let's zoom into real-world application for a second. If you're over 40, lifting weights twice a week, prioritizing protein, sleeping reasonably well, and you add creatine, you are reinforcing muscle and cellular energy simultaneously. That stacking effect matters more than any single supplement. If you're cognitively stressed, running on poor sleep, and trying to maintain performance, creatine might provide a marginal edge. Marginal edges compound over years, and that's really the theme of this entire discussion. Creatine is not dramatic, it's incremental, and incremental improvements sustained over time are how aging trajectories shift. Now let's return to aging and longevity clearly. We do not have long-term human trials showing creatine extends lifespan. There are no randomized controlled studies demonstrating increased human longevity. Animal studies show interesting lifespan extensions, but animals are not humans. There is also a regulatory reality check here. In 2024, European regulators reviewed evidence submitted for a formal cognitive health claim. They concluded a cause and effect relationship had not yet been established. That doesn't mean creatine is ineffective. It means the evidence threshold for official health claims is extremely high, and that's how it should be. If you're looking for a magic longevity pill, creatine will disappoint you. But if you're looking for support of foundational systems that influence how well you age, it becomes more interesting, because aging well isn't about one molecule. It's about reinforcing systems, muscle strength, brain energy resilience, metabolic flexibility, sleep integrity. Creatine appears to support at least two of those pillars. That is meaningful. Let's set expectations clearly. If creatine benefits you cognitively, it will feel likely subtle. You won't wake up feeling superhuman. You may notice slightly steadier focus, slightly improved mental endurance, maybe fewer crashes during long cognitive tasks, maybe marginal better recall under pressure. Small improvements accumulate over years, and aging is a long game. If you expect fireworks, you'll miss the signal. If you track performance thoughtfully, you may see it. Quick pause. This video is for educational purposes only and is not medical or legal advice. If you have kidney disease, bipolar disorder, or take medications affecting kidney function, talk with your clinician before supplementing. Individual context always matters. If you're finding this helpful, hit like and subscribe. It helps this channel keep prioritizing evidence over hype. Now let's address common myths. Myth 1, creatine destroys your kidneys. In healthy individuals at recommended doses, long-term studies have not shown kidney damage. Serum can rise slightly because it's related to creatine metabolism. That does not automatically equal kidney injury. If you have existing kidney disease, that's different. Work with your physician. Myth number 2, creatine causes hair loss. This concern mostly comes from one small study that showed an increase in DHT, a hormone linked to male pattern baldness. DHT is essentially a form of testosterone that can shrink hair follicles in people who are genetically prone to balding. That finding has not been consistently replicated. There is no strong real-world evidence that creatine directly causes hair loss. If you are genetically predisposed, monitor, but panic is not data. Myth number 3, creatine dehydrates you. Creatine increases water inside muscle cells. It is not a dehydration agent at standard doses. Hydration still matters, of course. Now let's make this practical. If you want to approach this scientifically, think of it as a small self-experiment rather than a leap of faith. Most clinical trials on creatine monohydrate use doses in the range of about 3 to 5 grams per day. That's the amount typically studied for both performance and cognitive research. If someone chooses to try it, that research range is where most of the human data exists. Consistency tends to matter more than timing. One useful approach is to track a single measurable outcome. That could be training volume, grip strength, reaction time on a simple app, or memory recall tasks. Keep everything else as stable as possible for a few weeks. Then compare performance before and after. That reduces placebo guesswork. Supplements work when treated like structured observations, not belief systems. Now, here's a simple decision framework. What's your goal? Strength and performance? Strong evidence supports benefit. Brain resilience under stress? Evidence is emerging and modest. Longevity extension? Not supported by human trials. What's your baseline? Vegetarian or vegan? You may have lower baseline creatine intake and potentially see more noticeable effects. Older adult focused on maintaining strength and cognitive resilience? Creatine alongside resistance training is where most supportive data exists. Frequently sleep deprived or cognitively taxed? Energy buffering may be more relevant. And always check red flags. If you have underlying medical conditions or take prescription medications, check with your healthcare provider before starting any new supplement. Context determines safety. There's one more thing almost nobody talks about when it comes to creatine and brain health. Baseline intake. Creatine isn't technically an essential nutrient because your body can make it, but can make it doesn't always mean makes optimal amounts of it. Most people get some creatine from red meat and fish. If you eat very little of those foods, your baseline levels may already be lower. Vegetarians and vegans in particular often start with lower muscle and brain creatine stores. Also, some studies show they may experience slightly larger performance gains from supplementation. That doesn't mean everyone needs it. It means response depends partly on when you're starting. Think of it like filling a gas tank. If you're already 90% full, adding more won't feel dramatic. If you're at half a tank, you might notice a difference. Another under-discussed point is timing of expectations. Creatine isn't caffeine. You don't feel it in 30 minutes. It works by gradually increasing stored levels in muscle and brain tissues over days to weeks. So if someone takes it once and says, I don't feel anything, that's like going to the gym once and wondering where your biceps are. Biology rewards consistency. And here's a subtle but important mindset shift. If you think of it as a cellular infrastructure support, you'll evaluate it more realistically. It's not flashy, it's foundational. And foundational things are often boring until you lose them. Now, let's draw the boundary clearly. Creatine is one of the most studied performance supplements available. It has modest but real emerging cognitive evidence. It may support important pillars of healthy aging, but it is not a proven longevity drug and is certainly not magic. If it were, I'd be selling it next to unicorn vitamins. Aging well is not about miracle molecules. It is about reinforcing systems consistently over time. Creatine may help support those systems, but it cannot replace foundational behaviors. Used responsibly, it is a tool, and tools are more useful than hype. So did everyone get creatine wrong? Not entirely. We just told half the story. Creatine isn't just about lifting heavier. It's about cellular energy management. Energy management matters for both muscle and brain. That's the big picture. Final reminder, this video is for educational purposes only and is not medical or legal advice. Always get individualized guidance when appropriate. If you found this helpful, like and subscribe and tell me what myth you want me to tackle next. I'm Marcus, the Wellness Watchdog, and you've been watching Health Sense or Nonsense. Wellness Watchdog out.